Hello and welcome to I'm Your Biggest Fan, the podcast that chats to your favourite artists about their favourite artists. I'm your host, Jazmin L'Amy, in conjunction with the Noizze podcast network and sponsored by Satanic Tico. On today's episode, we're chatting about Oceansize, who are a Manchester-based post-rock and psychedelic rock outfit that formed in 1998 and ended in 2011. But not first before influencing tens of hundreds of bands, including British avant-garde outfit Sugar Horse and their vocalist Ashley Tubb. Sugar Horse are self-described as a decidedly average monotonous rock band and incorporate hilarious song titles into their material like Fat Dracula, Shouting Judas at Bob Dylan, and pictures of dogs having sex, and more. They can be found on Instagram at Sugar Horse Are Awful, on Facebook at Sugar Horse Ruined My Birthday, and Twitter at SugarHorse666. Amazing. So yeah, as I explained before, the whole idea of this podcast is it's basically talking to other people's favorite artists about their favorite artists, because quite often, especially with the ease of access with social media, I think a lot of fans seem to forget that musicians just started out as fans like they did. So it's quite a cool way for you as well, like between album cycles and answering the same old tour questions and music questions, just to like delve back into your childhood and just reminisce on the band and the music that got you started on this journey in the first place, basically. So yeah, welcome to I'm Your Biggest Fan, and the band.
Happy to be here.
Sick. And the band you want to talk about today is a band called Oceansize.
Yes,
which
indeed.
I'm excited for because I've done a couple of these episodes now and I've heard of all of the bands that have been mentioned besides this one. So this was like a really cool one to delve into, like completely from scratch, having no prior knowledge at all. So nice. I guess, the first question is, do you remember the first time you heard Oceansize?
Yep, I remember very well. And this is going to be like super mid 2000s, like heavy internet user memory right now. So when I was a teenager, I basically spent about 80% of my life posting and reading forums, essentially. And I remember I first started getting into, I guess, more like the weirder end of rock music when I'd heard At the Drive-In for the first time, like Relationship of Command. And like anyone who's heard that record will know that like everything's out of tune. Everything sounds really harsh. Everything's really distorted and like super overcompressed. And it's just like odd punk music, I guess. It's just weird. And I was kind of after more stuff like that. So through delving through forum posts, I ended up down a bit of like a YouTube video rabbit hole where you're just going through like recommended videos.
Yep.
And then I stumbled across an Oceansize song called Unfamiliar, which I guess we'll get to that question in a bit, but it's off my favorite album of theirs. And it was one of those things that, like, I don't know, I find with most music that I really like, I either strongly dislike it at first or strongly like it. Like, it always gives me some kind of quite extreme stance on it. You know what I mean? Anything in the middle there, I tend to never listen to again.
Okay.
Just because it's not memorable, I guess. But yeah, I remember it's one of the rare ones where I like really liked it as soon as I heard it, and then the more I delved into the like back catalogue of the band, the kind of more, I guess, impressive it was. Like, just how every song I listened to seemed completely different from the last, but still within the same realm. So that's kind of the first memory.
So you mentioned there that at the time you were listening to like a lot of weird, unconventional, like kind of punk stuff. So when you did hear Oceansize, what was it about them that stood out compared to everything else you were listening to at that point in your life?
Well, I've never been that good at like it sounds kind of weird coming from like a musician, but I've never been that good at like listening to a piece of music and being able to pick out what anyone's like doing in the piece of
Hmm.
music. Like I kind of most of the time when I'm listening to music for the first time, I kind of hear it like. Do you remember when you were a kid and you couldn't tell the difference between like guitars and bass and drums? It all just sounded like a big block, and you
Yeah.
either liked the big block or you didn't like it. Like I feel like that's me most of the time, and I have
Okay.
to really put in work to pick that apart after the fact when I'm listening to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know, listening to Oceansize for the first time, it didn't really occur to me that it sounded that it was like any kind of different genre than what I was listening to, but I guess it is. But yeah, it's I like lots. I guess one of the big things I like about it, and this is going to be weird for lots of people who are like into that band, is I know lots of people who are like really big Oceansize heads are really into how like technical and crazy like musicianship like all of the songs are, and that's cool, but I've never really been into that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
I just really like the the songs, you know what I mean, like the chords and the vocal melodies are what I dig the most.
So you're
And
definitely not a fan of like technical metal.
yeah, that's not really my bag. I like some of it. I like some of it just because of I don't know. There's like I like some Meshuggah um because it sounds like nothing else, and it's like
Yeah.
the heaviest band on earth, or one of them. And I like Dillinger Escape Plan just because it sounds like fucking chaos. um but yeah, not I wouldn't say I wouldn't listen to like I've never really delved into like death metal or anything, and I know those kind of genres are kind of pride themselves on technicality, right? So
Mm.
it just hasn't really interested me. Like
Yeah.
if you dig that, that's cool, but yeah, it's not really my bag. So it's kind of a weird favorite band to have because everyone else that really likes that band is like really into how technical it is, but I couldn't care less about that, to be honest. But it's strange.
You're like, it's just catchy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
So you mentioned there that the first song you heard was titled Unfamiliar.
Mhm.
Is that so like for me, for example, like one of my favorite bands is Guns N' Roses, and the first Guns N' Roses song I heard, Welcome to the Jungle, has remained my favorite song in the entire world. So is has Unfamiliar remained your favorite song, or have there been other songs since then that kind of have more meaning to you now?
It's still definitely up there. There are kind of there are a few more that trump it. I'd say it's probably like in my top 10 favorite songs of theirs still, but there are a couple that trump it. There's like uh, they've got some good song titles as well. They've got Women Who Love Men Who Love Drugs on the first album.
I know a few of those.
That song's really great, and it sounds nothing like the song title would have you believe.
Mm.
Um, and they've got a song called Massive Bereavement off that record as well that's really good. But their like absolute favorite of mine is it's kind of two songs in one, I guess.
Okay.
Uh, it's called Ornament slash The Last Wrongs, uh, which is like a really pretty kind of instrumental thing
Oh, nice.
to
Yeah.
close their second album. But then at the end, it goes into this big like I've literally never heard any other bands do anything like this really, but it goes into this big. It's almost like a hymnal piece, like it's
Okay.
a big hymn with like loads of vocal harmonies and it's really like bombastic, and everything just seems to be moving the entire time underneath these like really beautiful like hymnal vocal passages.
Yeah.
um yeah, I just think it's really glorious. So, but I have to save that song. Like, do you have songs like this where you have to kind of you keep it back, and then
Yeah, for like the right
it
moment.
comes to you at the right time. Because I don't want to ruin that song, because I could listen to that song like every day, I reckon, but I don't want to ruin it for myself in the long term, so I kind of keep it back for the special moments, you know.
Yeah, it's like when you're eating when you're eating a roast dinner and you save your favorite bit till the end.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess you could say that that song is the Yorkshire pudding of roast dinners for
Yeah,
Oceansize.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So you mentioned there as well that you have a favorite album of theirs as well. Um, which one is that one?
I mean, it's a tough pick, because I expect everyone that you have on this show is like, I love all of them, so so I'm probably repeating what a million other people have said, but um it's a tough pick, but I really like the record Frames, which is
Okay, yeah.
their record with like, I think it has like 6 or 7 songs on it. They're all just really long. It's like an hour long. Um and they're all really like expansive, but there's lots of repetition on it as well, which I really like. I really like music that repeats a lot, like finds something cool and then repeats that into infinity. And
Yeah, rinse the fuck out of it.
yeah, it's kind of like a trancey thing that I really dig. Uh, but yeah, they do that a lot on that record. But there's also like songs with lots of changes in them. It's probably the record that has their heaviest song, but
Okay.
also the record that has their like, I guess, their most like melodic and slightest songs. And I really dig that it goes like back and forth like that. And there's an instrumental track on there as well, called Old Friend of Christie's, that's like one note for like 9 minutes, which
Wow.
is right up my street. Just like drone and repetition is my thing. So
Nothing too complicated about that.
yeah, exactly. You can't get simpler than that. Just the same one note over and over again for 10 minutes. I'm down.
So that record came out in 2007.
Mhm.
And from what I've got in front of me here, that's like 4 out of 5 of their albums. So quite like later on in their
Mhm.
musical career. Um, I've got a couple of EPs written down here as well, actually. So why like that particular point in their career? Because I find a lot of people either really love like the early days of a band, or they love like the current direction. So what is it kind of about like that section of their career that stood out to you
I
most besides?
I think it's because I like their entire back catalogue so much that it has to be some kind of like personal connection to a particular record that kind of
Right.
makes it my favorite. So, as we kind of talked about earlier, that song Unfamiliar is on Frames. So it was my first Oceansize record that I like heard the whole way through and listened to like a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so like dense, like with musical stuff, that I didn't feel like I needed another one of theirs for quite a while
Yeah.
afterwards, which is kind of cool.
It
So
ticked every box.
yeah, I like sat with it for like a few months, a good few months before I like even listened to any of their other material. So it's really like ingrained on my brain, like emotionally, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's I wouldn't say it's particularly like the direction they're going in with the record. It's just the collection of songs just I have emotional attachments to them. So
Yeah. Oh, that's a nice story. So Sugar Horse have about 3 EPs and one full-length album, I think. I'm correct.
yeah, I lose count of the I obviously I don't lose count of the full length album, but I lose count of the little things we've released, just because we do it quite a lot.
Right.
But yeah, that sounds about right.
You'll have to take my word for it.
Yeah,
How has your love of Oceansize influenced your own music writing, and how has that changed over time?
yeah. Well, we definitely, I guess we're not really a band that has like a single sound that we always do, you know? Like I guess we get kind of, I don't want to say lumped in like it's a bad thing, but we get put in with a lot of either like doom bands,
Hmm.
uh, or maybe like post metal bands. And while I like quite a few bands from both of those scenes, um, I'm not. I wouldn't say that we really tick boxes in either of those scenes, just because we dart around musically quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that's come from listening to Oceansize. Like, I guess like a band who had a very like singular, let's say Slayer, right?
Mhm.
Slayer would try and write an album, and they'd maybe write three fast songs. Well, unless it's Raining Blood, when it's all just like really fast. But let's take Seasons of the Abyss, right?
Right. Okay.
When they were writing Seasons in the Abyss, my guess would be that they wrote like War Ensemble and trying to think of another fast song from Seasons in the Abyss. It doesn't come to my mind right now, but they wrote a couple fast songs, right? And then they were like, oh, we should write like a mid-tempo one now to break the album up a little bit, make it more interesting, right? We kind of do that, but instead of doing it with like song tempos or like the feel of the song, we'll just be like, should we write a shoegaze song now and stick that in, or should we do like a really discordant noise rock song now, or should we do like a full on like 80s goth song at this
You go
point?
for completely different genres.
Yeah, we just like go for that's how we kind of move musically, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I definitely nicked from that band, like wholesale. So I probably owe Mike some money. um but yeah, I guess there's that. There's also like I'm a big fan. Mike, if you listen, Mike is. I'm fortunate enough to be quite good friends with Mike, who's the singer guitarist from this band. He may listen to this out of pure hubris, and if he is, you deserve to be embarrassed by the following statements. But my favorite thing about Oceansize is the way that Mike writes vocal melodies.
Okay.
I think they're like without exception, every vocal melody on every song that they've done is like flawless, and there's just something about the way he writes vocals and the way he sings them that just really resonates with me. Like some of them might not be like the catchiest, like poppiest things in the world, but just the way that they work with the music
Yeah.
just really speaks to me.
So
And
they're very tailored to what that song is.
yeah, I guess so. And I I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't like examined it musically, but sometimes I hear back some parts from some of our oh shit. Sometimes I hear back from like parts and some of our songs. This is terrifying
Oh,
now.
you look. This is so Halloweeny.
Listeners at home, my lights have gone off. Yeah, sometimes I hear back like parts from some of our songs, and I can kind of hear his like inflections in it and stuff. But yeah, I guess it's mainly those two things. I saw them once. I was lucky enough to see them once as well, and they were like deafeningly loud.
Like, yeah.
We like to be really loud, so that's a thing as well.
So before we delve into you seeing them live, you just mentioned there that like the vocalist and guitarist Mike. How did that come about?
Well, we he has a solo project. It's called Vennart. That's his last name. They were playing a show in Bristol a few years ago. I like begged my pal who was booking the show to get us on to open. And we ended up doing that. And then he invited us out for I think a little 3-show run later the next year. And he's just been like really friendly ever since, which has been super nice. And now me and him just send like nerdy guitar gear like messages to each other all the time. Basically, that's
Yeah, that's
that's what the friendship entails. Being like, look at the fuzz pedal I just brought.
that's
Like,
what real friendships are built on.
exactly.
So when you did meet him, did you have like a fanboy moment, or were you relatively calm and collected? And
I'm. Can I say a couple? Like, I know I've sworn already, but
oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna drop some big swears. uh, so my best friend Damien Sale is the bass player in a band called McCluskey. Um, but I believe back in the mid 2000s, Oceansize, they actually went on tour in America with McCluskey. So Mike knows those guys, and had met Damien previous to us playing with Mike. So
Okay.
we turned up and loaded into this local venue called the Fleece for sound check, and Mike and his bands were on stage sound checking when we kind of loaded in. So we got all our stuff in, and then I just like sat on the floor and just playing with my phone, being like, "This is pretty cool to see them sound check."
Mm-hmm.
I think they played a small section of an Oceanside song as well, and I was like, "This is awesome." But then they stopped. Um, Mike had obviously noticed that I'd come in, and unbeknownst to me, Damien had messaged him beforehand to uh, to read me a lovely message at some point during the gig. And
Okay.
it turned out that that time was in sound check when there were probably three other people in the room
Mm-hmm.
apart from the band on stage and like me. And Mike kind of stopped playing and said down the microphone, uh, "Are you Ash?" And I said yes. And he said, "Damien Sale says that I hope you die of Ebola." So that was
What? That was the first thing he said to you.
yeah, that was the first thing he said to me. That was the first thing he said to me. So yeah, that was a good first encounter. But also, I'd also he doesn't remember this, and I'm shocked I remember this. I don't drink anymore, and for reasons that you'll probably come to understand in this next story.
7 years sober over here.
Way good job.
Fuck yeah.
I'm around the same mark, but I don't have like a date penciled for when it happened, but it's around the same time. 5 to 7 years, something like that. I lose count.
About
But
6 years then.
amazing. Yeah, something like that. Um, but yeah, a few years before that, I'd gone to this really cool festival at this like warehouse in Manchester, and lots of different like psychedelic bands were playing there. And I saw Mike there, but I'd been drinking incredibly heavily for about 9 to 10 hours at that point. So it didn't really make any sense. And I think I just went up to him and shouted something in his face and then proceeded to like shout soup all over my all
Oh.
over my shoes, like right in front of him. Thankfully he doesn't remember that. But yeah, it's a good couple first interactions. It's a minor miracle that he'll even grace me with messages, to be honest.
So it was drunkenly shouting at him and then throwing up, and
Yeah.
then him telling you to die of Ebola.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a big jump
Exactly.
to then sending guitar pedals to each other.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a real modern romance right here. Oh, I love that. So you also mentioned there that you've seen Oceansize just the once in concerts. They broke up in 2011. So
Yeah.
when was the first time you saw them?
I think I saw them in 2011 on their last tour. I think it was their fourth from last ever show, I
Right,
think.
okay. Did you know it was going to be one of their last tours or last shows, or was that announced
No,
afterwards?
I think they broke up mid-tour, I believe. But I saw them, I think it was their last UK show before they were supposed to go to Europe. then they went to Europe and played like 2 or 3 shows, and then announced that they were breaking up, but then came back and played like a farewell show like a month or so later in Manchester, where they're from. So I saw them just before they broke up, and it was mad good. Um, some unexpected deep cuts on the set list as well. From like, I don't know, but back it's I make it sound like it's ages ago, but back in 2011, right? It was kind of hard to like sometimes Wikipedia wasn't like 100% accurate, right? And then you could also look on things like Amazon Music, or like Spotify wasn't even really a thing at that
Hmm.
point. Um, and all of these, and like iTunes and stuff, but they weren't all like up to date
Yeah.
entirely, especially with like EPs. So I didn't necessarily know their entire back catalog at that point, and they
Right.
played like I think they played like 2 songs from a couple EPs, and I was like, I've never heard these songs before. This is
Fuck.
crazy, which was cool. And then that made me like dig them out afterwards. So that was a cool show. But yeah, it was like battle volume loud. Um, they played an awesome set list. Unfortunately, I had to leave like 2 minutes early because of the last train home. But
Oh, always the
apart from that, it
case.
was awesome. I saw pretty much everything I wanted to. So
That's good. And like besides musically, like visually, and like how were they entertainment wise as a live band?
well, there were for a band, there were a lot of them, I guess. So there were like there's 3 guitars, um, and then one of the guitarists also plays like keyboards, and
Hmm.
then the bass player also played some keyboards, and then I think he played some guitar on one of the songs as well. So there were like 4 guitars at one point. Um, and then the drummer famously set his kit up like super weirdly, so you couldn't even really see him when he was on stage. Like it was, if you imagine like a drum kit is kind of off to one side, right? When you see
Yeah.
someone playing a drum kit, he was like completely straight on. So like the kick was here, and then the snare was like right on top of the kick, and then there's like 2 toms left and right, and then 2 more toms left and right, and it was strange. It's a strange band to behold.
It's a
Like,
very genius way to stop another drummer using your kit, though.
yeah, right, yeah, right, yeah. But I guess because it's equal both directions. I think he had 2 hi-hats, like one on either side as well.
Okay.
So I guess like either-handed drummer could play that kit, but I'm not sure. I'm not a drummer, so maybe not.
It's like
But yeah,
if you told someone who didn't play drums and who had never seen a drum kit before to set up a drum kit, that's how I'd imagine they'd set it up.
exactly. It's like how a drum kit is set up when someone who doesn't know anything about drums has to like animate someone playing drums in a cartoon. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
exactly
I love that. I've got a hilarious image in my head now of like just a normal drummer coming to try and play it and be like, what the fuck is going on here?
that.
Something's slightly off, but I can't figure it out.
I'm sure that used to happen tons. I'm sure it must have. It must have.
So do you happen, I'm assuming you do you happen to know where the band name comes from?
I believe it's nicked from a song title of a Jane's Addiction song.
It is indeedy.
There we go. Trivia there. Um, yeah, from maybe is it on Nothing Shocking, or is it a later one? I don't know. I'm not really familiar with Jane's Addiction, so
Well, my next point of that question was going to be, if they weren't called Oceansize, what's another Jane's Addiction song that they could have been called?
oh my God. I do not. I know like shoplifter. And I think that's about it.
I've got
Uh,
I've
it's
written
probably a
down
song. It's probably a song called Nothing Shocking, right? That'd work. That's
that would
fine.
work. I've got written down here, Irresistible Force.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
one of my other favorite ones was a song called Just Because.
Oh yeah, that's all right. That's an all right band title actually. That's
Yeah.
like they sound like a Boston punk band from like 1991. That'd work.
It would. So when it's like I've not been able to listen to the entire discography, but I've really enjoyed the album. I can't even fucking pronounce it.
Efflorescence, yeah.
Efflorescence, that's it. I keep wanting to say efflorescence, and I'm trying to mix that with evanescence. But I really enjoyed the opening track, Eye on the Morning, because it was like really serene and really pretty and like tranquil, and I really liked that. So if you had to direct someone listening to Oceansize for the very first time, what 3 tracks would you suggest encapsulates them perfectly? Which is actually, every time I've asked this question, it's been like a relatively few easy answers, but because they have so many songs that sound so different, I'm intrigued to know what 3 songs you would pick.
I would pick the first one is quite easy, I think, because it kind of starts in their like melodic, like weird psychedelic thing, and then at the end gets really heavy. But one day this could be all yours. This could be yours. Off FRS. Is a good place to start because it's also not that long.
Right.
The other difficult thing is you like recommend that someone listens to a song and it's like 9.5 minutes and they're like, I haven't got time for that, man. Like,
Yep, I feel that.
yeah. That one, I think Trail of Fire off of Frames is pretty good just because it's like, I feel like it's really melodic, but it's also pretty intense with like a lot of changes and stuff. People tend to, if I say the name Oceansize as well, and people have like heard of them but aren't like into them, they normally say that song, I found. And then Music for a Nurse off the second record is because I think lots of people have heard that in an old Orange advert but probably haven't realized it. So I would hopefully like uncover some kind of like weird memory of this.
Yeah, I can imagine that now. So, like I said before, they broke up in 2011. And they've mentioned in passing over the years the prospect of a reunion, although it's very unlikely anytime soon. How would you feel about them playing reunion shows? And if they were to create new music nowadays, what do you think that would sound like in comparison to their earlier stuff?
Oh man, it's a tough call. Obviously I'd be really into them doing reunion shows. That'd be cool. I'd love to see that band like as many times as humanly possible. But new music, what would that sound like? I think it would be a lot like when I say weird, I know it's some of it's already pretty weird, like, but I think it would be a lot like noisier. I think maybe a bit more psychedelic, and less. It would be a lot less like overtly metal in places. I think, like with there's a couple chuggy parts here and there in Oceanside songs. I don't think the guys would be up for that now, but
I do love a good chug.
yeah, I don't mind one from time to time.
So the members of Oceansize have gone on to create new endeavors and continue side projects as well. For example, like I don't know, I was like learning so much when I was like doing my research on this. For example, like Biffy Clyro and most recently Empire State Bastards. Are you a fan of any of those bands? And which ones remain up your street and which ones aren't your cup of tea?
Love me some Biffy. Mike plays like live guitar for them, like touring, like second guitar for Simon. I love me some Biffy. I know lots of people like old like mad Biffy. I'm actually a big fan of like their like arena rock periods, like Only Revolutions and stuff with the big choruses. I like a vocal melody, you know. Yeah, I really like Biffy, and the new Empire State Bastard record is probably one of my favorites of this year so far.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people say that.
yeah, it's proper nuts, which I love.
Pure
It's
chaos.
it's pretty awesome actually. Like Mike, Mike, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Mike messaged me so it was like all demos, and he was like super excited about finally being able to do it, because I think that him and Simon have been talking about it for years, but obviously Simon Neil is a busy guy, right? They finally decided that they were going to do it, and he messaged me and he was like, "You will never fucking guess who's playing drums on this record." I was like, and no, I won't. And I was guessing like lots of people that we might know, like in common, or like, I don't know, people in like bigger metal bands in the UK. And he was like, "It's Dave Lombardo," which is like insane. It like,
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming at all. But that's pretty cool. But yeah, I really like that record. It's really weird, and I like really weird. So
I feel like we've definitely established that on this interview.
Or also, I should say that Steve Hodgson, who played bass for Oceansize, is in a band called USA Nails, named after the chain of nail bars, who are like they're like a noise rock, like Jesus Lizardy type band.
Sounds like a great combo.
They're awesome. They're really good. Would recommend to anyone even slightly interested.
Nice. I have one more question for you and we're going to wrap up. Are you a fan of band merch?
Band merch? Yeah.
Have you owned any Oceansize band merch before?
Yeah, I have a tour t-shirt from the tour I saw them on.
That's good. I love tour shirts.
Annoyingly, I wore it for a couple years and it's like kind of faded now, but it's like I have like a box of retired merch that I don't wear anymore, but I just keep it in a box.
Yep.
Just in case one day I want to have a look at it again.
Is it like one of those like annoyingly faded shades, or like a cool faded?
Nah, it's annoyingly faded, like it looks bad. But I still want it. Like everything in that box though is like faded, or like the white t-shirts in there have like gross pit stains or something. So it's not like I keep it there in case I want to sell it one day, because it'll be worth loads of money, because no one's buying any of that shit. It will just be for when I'm like 50 and I'll be like, I'll have a look at the shirts today.
Like some people keep memory boxes, you keep a merch box.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for having this chat with me. I hope you had a fun time. I had a great time learning about a band I hadn't previously known, so that's always exciting.
Nice. Cool. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your weekend.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you for listening to I'm Your Biggest Fan. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, send it to your nan in the post. Every little helps. You can follow us everywhere at biggestfan_pod. Follow me everywhere at Wrathchild_Jazz. Noizze at Noizze UK on everything. Noizze Podcast Network at Noizze Podcast Network on everything. And Satanic Tico at Satanic Tico and at Pitch Black Nor. If you have a band member in mind that you think would be perfect for this podcast, perfect for this topic of conversation, or maybe you are the band member and you're the super fan, drop us a comment, drop us an email. All other info can be found below in the description. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you soon.